Okay, this is my first live Q&A. I'm hoping that everything's working okay. Do give me all your feedback on this. Please feel free to ask me questions as we go because I can see a little chat function on the right hand side. So do let me know if you want to ask me some questions. I've got a load of questions ready. I'm going to go through and answer as many of them as I can. So I'll get straight into it and answer the first question. Who have we got first? Okay, Sarah in Exeter has emailed me asking to explain what positions are. What are positions on the harmonica? To a lot of beginners, this is a bit of a strange idea and it can be confusing. It's not necessarily immediately obvious what positions are. So let me give you a little idea here. First, I should say that it's nothing to do with actual physical positions. It's not to do with where you sit on the harmonica. Although you will be moving up and down the harmonica, that's independent of what position you are in. So positions are all to do with the actual key that you're playing in on the harmonica. So if you're new to the harmonica, you've probably got a C harmonica. You've probably got a little C on it there in the corner. That means that naturally the position to be played on that harmonica is C, but specifically C major. So if you play in the middle of the harmonica, then you're going to get the C major scale. So to play in major keys in the key of C on this C harmonica is okay. Now, positions are a way of us saying what key are we playing in relative to the harmonica that we're on. So the relationship between the key of the harmonica and the key of the song, because you're not always going to play on the same key harmonica of the key of the song. So although I just said that you have the C major scale on a C harmonica, you're not always going to be playing in the key of C. It's possible to play in different keys. The most common other keys to play in on a C harmonica would be in the key of G, the key of D. They would be the next two most common positions. It gets complicated. I don't want to get into too much detail in case there's complete beginners who that's kind of confusing enough already for. But the reasons you're going to play in a different key would be to do with the kind of chords that you're playing over. So which notes are going to be available on this harmonica, because we haven't got all the notes. So sometimes it's actually easier, or at least it's just as easy, or at least it sounds just as good if you know what you're doing, to play in, say, G or D on a C harmonica. Okay, that's only a brief introduction to positions, but if you take one sentence away, it's about the relationship between the key of the harmonica and the key of the song. So Sarah, I hope that answers your question. If you want to ask me a further question, please feel free to email or comment on the video and let me know. Let's see what's next here. Oh, Tom from somewhere in the US, I'm not sure, has emailed asking about the intro riff, the introductory riff in My Babe by Little Walter. So I've got a lesson on the solo in the middle of My Babe, which I'll put a link to when this is uploaded to YouTube. But the intro itself, well, let's have a little look at that now. So, oh, I should get the right harmonica. I can't remember off the top of my head what key it's in. Is it in E? I'm not sure. I'm going to do this on an A harmonica. Let's hope it's in E. I can't really remember. So let's say it was. I'm on an A harmonica, and this would be the opening riff to My Babe. Okay, so that's a warble on 3 and 4 draw, a trill on 3/4 draw. And I'm putting a little bit of a bend on that 3 draw just as I begin. 2 draw. 2 draw again. So 4 blow. And kind of just breathing in a chord. You could just play 4 draw, or you could open your mouth and get a chord. It's quite fast, so it's hard to tell exactly. And then finishing with that 3 draw warble again. So, or. So if we put those together. And then sometimes I think he finishes with a little 2 draw, so that would be. Da 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 dum. So if you sped that up. Hey, I've just played 2 4 blows. It's 2 4 blows. It's not 4 blow and then 4 draw. You probably could do a 4 blow 4 draw, nice little variation. But I think it is 2 4 blows on the record. Oh, I've got myself in a knot there. The perils of doing a live stream. So we've got 3 4 warble on 3 4 draw, and then 2 draw 2 draw, 4 blow 4 blow, and then the 3 4 draw warble again. Okay, I hope that helps. It was Tom, wasn't it? I hope that gets you started on that riff, and good luck with the rest of the song. Sam in Israel has asked, why is the harmonica called a harp? You know, that's a really good question. I don't know the full answer to this, so if you're a blues historian, harmonica historian, please correct me on this, put your comments on the video. I've always thought of harmonica players as a bit lazy. I'm allowed to say it because I am one. I think harmonica is a bit of a mouthful, excuse the pun. So I reckon that we're just quite lazy and want to sort of shorten it and get to a point where it's a bit easier to say and kind of quicker in the moment. I think maybe there's also that it came from blues harp, because you hear people say harp, but then you also hear blues harp as an expression. So I mean, I don't know if I would call the harmonica particularly like a harp, the actual traditional harp instrument, but I suppose it could have been used as a way of saying it's a blues version of a harp. So maybe that's part of it as well. But I just put it down to the fact that it's got the same first 3 letters, and it's just a way of shortening it. Maybe you could start using the word harm if you think that makes more sense linguistically. Who knows? Okay, on to Brendan. I hope I'm saying your name right, Brendan. Brendan Karcher, I think it is, who put a YouTube comment asking, why does hole 8 sound like a high-pitched wail? Okay, this is quite common for beginners. I don't know, I don't think you said in your comment, Brendan, whether it was the blow or the draw, but quite often people get the draw notes, the higher draw notes, sounding quite squealy. Quite sort of shrill, and as you called it, high-pitched wail. This is often down to your mouth shape. I'll put a link in this video when it's uploaded to my lesson on playing the 2 draw correctly on the harmonica. Now, I know you're talking about hole 8, but that will apply to your hole 8 as well, because often if your mouth shape isn't quite right, you're going to get all sorts of noises that you don't necessarily want on the instrument. So, for example, I'll give you the example on 2 draw just for the moment, because it's the most obvious one. On 2 draw, if your mouth is too restricted and restrained and sort of kind of tight and small, and your jaw is high and you're very enclosed, then you get like that, kind of really horrible sound. So what you've got to do is open up that jaw and lower your tongue to be resting and allow the air to come in more naturally. That's true on 2 draw. You can watch the video for a bit more on that. I'm assuming you mean 8 draw, so let's assume you're on 8 draw for now. I'll talk about 8 blow in a minute. But on 8 draw, if you've got the right mouth shape, that's what you'll be getting. I'm presuming that's not what you mean by a high-pitched wail. It might be down to this mouth shape again. So just as on hole 2 draw it made a difference, hole 8 draw you may be getting that sound. Now I don't know if that comes through the microphone, but that's what I describe as a high-pitched wail. Now that sound, I'm producing it by tensing up again, going to that small little mouth shape, which is not something that you want to be doing. You want to kind of avoid that if possible. You might be forcing the air in too much as well. You've got to really think of this as breathing on the harmonica, not, I mean, you hear people say sucking and blowing. Those terms are really misleading, because if you're then it's not going to sound nice at all. You're going to get a real sort of reaction from the harmonica. It's going to say, whoa, this isn't what I hoped for. So you need to relax, you need to lower your jaw, and you need to breathe in gently. You might get a similar problem on the 8 blow. I'm not sure if it was the 8 draw or 8 blow, but you won't necessarily get that same squeak. You'll probably just get the note will bend if you force it too hard. So 8 blow, if I force that more, then it actually starts to bend a little bit. So you might be getting a bend without trying to as well, which you need to be able to relax again and take that lower jaw sort of mouth shape. It's all about openness. It's about a cavity in your mouth. It's kind of hot potato sort of thinking of sort of needing as big a hole in there as possible to get the air in and out quite naturally. I hope, Brendan, that's helped answer your question. Again, please give me a follow-up if necessary and let me know how you're getting on with that. Please keep giving me your emails. You can tweet at LearnTheHarp as well, and do send me comments. Put your questions in the chat feature as well. I'd be really interested to hear any more of your questions. Next up, I've had an email from one of my followers, Mike Barton, who he's asked me a couple of questions. The first one is it me, or are the draw notes more difficult? Really good question, Mike. As I mentioned with the last question I was answering, the 2 draw can be a real giveaway for whether you've got the right mouth shape, the right embouchure or not. That shows that certain draw notes are going to be more difficult than others. The blow notes, especially the blow notes that don't bend, so blow holes 1 to 7, are generally going to be easy enough to play, or at least harder to get really wrong, I suppose, because you can't bend them by accident. You find it harder to kind of change the pitch and change the tone of them by accident. So there's less room for error, I suppose, on the blow notes. That said, the draw notes are no difficult in how you should approach them. It's just that maybe some of them are less forgiving with your embouchure. So you should be trying to get a really nice, clean sound on every hole, and that means this mouth shape that I've just mentioned, this sort of kind of big shape. you want to try and then get that on every note. So you should be using that on the blow notes as well as the draw notes. You don't have to change your mouth shape for the draw notes. So if your draw notes aren't sounding quite right, the blow notes aren't gonna be quite right either. It just won't be quite as obvious. You don't have to put any more effort in on the draw notes. If you do pull too hard, then that's going to bend the notes again and it's going to affect the tone. The whole nature of harmonica playing should be about breathing, not blowing, not drawing. This is a common problem, and you hear even quite experienced players playing too hard. I'm guilty of it sometimes. We all do it. We've got to tell ourselves to relax and play softly if possible. So just as with the last question, the higher draw notes, again, they might start squeaking if you pull too hard. So you really have to be careful with those. I hope, Mike, that answers that question. Your second question, this is a really good question. Chromatic, is it a good or a bad idea for beginners? I would say it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. I think the more learning you can do, the better. That said, they are, as my first harmonica teacher used to say, they are different beasts. It's a different beast entirely. I mean, they're different instruments. They've got different note layouts. I didn't get into the chromatic for several years after starting the diatonic, and I kind of regret it because I'm nowhere near on the chromatic sort of what I can do on the diatonic. My chromatic playing is really quite limited. I do a few things with the bands I play with, and I do teach the chromatic, but I'm not an advanced chromatic player. I think they are useful and they can teach you a little bit. Tying in with this idea of positions, there are certain positions, for example, third position, so playing in D on a C harmonica, that relate in an analogous way to playing the chromatic harmonica. So if I were to play something in third position on a C harmonica, kind of third position minor sounding blues, you can do a similar thing on the chromatic. Similar sort of sound, similar note selection. That's kind of sort of as far as I go on the chromatic. I don't do a lot on it, but that kind of minor blues sounding thing is quite similar to playing in third position on the diatonic, because essentially you're playing in third position on a chromatic. That said, if you want to get octave splits on a chromatic, and that's the way to get that big little Walter sound, that really bluesy sound on the chromatic, you need to get your mouth really wide. So if you've practiced octaves on a diatonic, they can feel quite wide anyway. The higher notes on a diatonic, you have to block out 3 notes in order to get the octave split. Sorry, and that's the same the whole way up and down a chromatic. It's the whole way up and down. You've got to block out 3 holes, and they're bigger, so you really have to get your mouth quite wide. It's a bit of a weird skill. If you're going to, as a beginner, try the chromatic as well as the diatonic, you have to be aware that they're different instruments. You don't want to go into it thinking, well, if I can play the diatonic, I can play the chromatic, in the sense of being able to just transfer everything over. They are different note layouts, they feel different. You can't get the same bends on a chromatic. It sounds kind of jazzy or more classical. It doesn't have that same bluesy sound. So just go into it with your eyes open if you're going to have a go at chromatic as a beginner. They're great instruments. They've got a lot to offer, and I think there's some good chromatic lessons out there. So check out people's YouTube lessons on chromatic playing, because there's some good stuff out there. Okay, Next, I've had an email from David. I hope I'm saying your name right again. I'm sure I'm not. David Clage. I'm not sure. Anyway, David has emailed me. Let me read you his email. He says, when I play the harmonica, occasionally the harmonica reeds will make a noticeable unwanted plink sound when I release the note. How do I prevent this plink sound? Um, I've asked David what harmonicas that this tends to happen on, and he said on the lower keys, so on his A, on his G harmonica, he noticed these plinks, as he calls them, on holes 2 to 5. More of these plinks around 2 and 3. On the higher keys, most of these plinks will be on holes 2 to 4. That's what he says. And he probably gets more on the holes 2 to 3. He doesn't say that he gets any on the hole 1, which is quite interesting given what I'd like to respond to this. Now, having not heard David playing, so I don't know exactly what sound he's talking about. This is just based on an email. But what I'm imagining is happening is the reeds are actually hitting the cover plates as he's playing. It would make sense that this was more common and went further up the harmonica on the lower key harmonicas, because the lower key harmonicas have longer, thicker reeds. So those reeds are more able to move and hit the cover plates. So that means you're going to get kind of a sound that might be the sound you're describing as a plink. Let me see if I can emulate this for you now. Sod's law, I'm not going to be able to get the sound, but here we go. See, now hopefully that's the sound you're talking about. There's a little, there's kind of a squeaky sort of sound. Now you've got to hear it apart from the normal sound. Now I'm doing this on hole 1 on a G harmonica, 1 draw, because I've found this happens most on hole 1, which is why I said it's interesting that, David, you said it doesn't tend to happen on hole 1. So it may be that I'm misidentifying the problem here. If that's not the sound you're looking for, then drop me an email, let me know, and I can have a rethink of it. And if it isn't, see if you can record it and send it to me, and then I'll let you know. If it is, it tends to be down to just pulling the note too hard and too aggressively. If you play the note quite softly, you don't get that problem. Whereas if you play it harder, you can get that sort of that squeak. With the really low harmonicas, this is a low C harmonica. It's the lowest harmonica I've got at the moment. You can hear a noise. I don't want to do that again because I don't think it's good for the instrument, but you can hear a noticeable little click, or I hope it's being picked up by the camera anyway because I can hear it. As I say, I find this is most common on hole 1. You might have found it on the other holes, 2 to 5. I would imagine you are playing really quite hard if you're getting it on those notes. So you do maybe need to try pulling back a bit and relaxing your playing just a tad. So, as I say, do let me know if that's not the issue. Actually, let me know if it is, because I would like to know how you get on with rectifying that. I've got a question here on the chat stream from Aaron Guevara. I hope that I'm saying your name right, mate. Any tips for closing the nasal cavity when doing the 2 draw? Closing the nasal cavity. I'm not sure I know what you mean, Aaron. I mean, I know what the nasal cavity is, but I don't know why you need to close the nasal cavity as such. I imagine you're getting a kind of a breath, a sort of like as you're playing, sort of forcing in air through your nose at the same time as playing. Hope that's what you mean. There's so much about playing the harmonica is about relaxing as you're playing notes. This would apply to any hole. When you're playing the two draw, you're gonna only get a nice sound on the two draw if you are able to relax and breathe in openly through your mouth. So if you're able to lower your jaw and keep your tongue relaxed at the base of your mouth, you're naturally going to be taking the air in through your mouth. Because if you look at when I'm playing through with my mouth shape as I want it to be, the hole is actually quite big. People are quite surprised by how big your mouth, your hole, the hole in your mouth has to be, how open it has to be. Now, what happens if you close that? You lose the sound of the note that you're trying to get, but that might also contribute to taking in too much air through your nose. I'm not sure. You may have to hold your nose at first. You may actually just have to get the air to get used to going through your mouth. If that isn't something that you're necessarily used to doing, it might be you might have to put in that barrier, literally hold your nose. I imagine that's the kind of thing you mean. I haven't seen any more comments from you on the chat stream, but do send me sorry, an email or tweet at LearnTheHarp with any follow-up to that question if you would like to. Okay, one final question for today, I think, and this is from Roger Scobie by email. He asks, who are the biggest influences in my playing? Good question. I won't give my whole life history, but my first harmonica teacher, Matt Walklett, who's based in Manchester in England, Matt Walklett was a big influence on me. He was the first guy who got me into blues music and that sort of thing. So there's probably some of his playing in there somewhere as well. I also studied a little bit with Lyndon Anderson, who's up in Newcastle in England. He's a great player, and I think he's rubbed off on me a bit. I've studied with some other players. I did study a bit with Carlos Del Junco in Canada, and although I don't claim to be anywhere near his level, he did have an influence on my methods of practice, which I try and pass on to all my students and through the YouTube videos. His approach to playing music and his creativity, I would hope there's a little bit of that in me. Other players I really love, I mean, Jason Ritchie, again, although I wouldn't say that I can do a lot of what he can do, I think his approach to scales and his approach to playing have probably influenced me a lot, and I've had the chance to meet him and chat with him and stuff as well. So, and then my favourite player of all time, Paul DeLay. I love Paul DeLay. If you haven't heard Paul DeLay, check him out, because he didn't overblow, he didn't do necessarily all the really complicated things, but he was so melodic and so original. He didn't sound like he'd just listened to Big Walter and Little Walter and Sonny Boy Williamson. He sounded as if, I don't know who he listened to, but he just came up with some great playing of his own. So he's been a big influence on me because he was just such a wonderful player to listen to. In terms of non-harmonica players, there's a guy I played with, one of the first guys I gigged with in a blues context was a guy called Gypsy Dave Smith, who was an Australian, but who ended up living in the UK. I think he's still up in the northeast near Newcastle. He was an influence on me in terms of performance, also in terms of dynamics in songs, in terms of playing technique wider than the harmonica, just blues in general. And then I've listened to a lot of 60s folk in my time growing up with my parents' record collection, and then my family, a lot of musicians in my family, so they've affected me. And then, you know, everything I listen to. My one piece of advice for beginners and people who aren't sure what to listen to everything. Try and steal everything. Take everything that you hear and use it to your advantage. Okay, I think that's it for this week. I'm going to try this again next week, so please do give me your feedback. Tell me which things you think work and which don't. Let me know if you have any questions for next time. You can comment on this video, you can send me emails, you can get me at the Facebook page. You can tweet at Learn the Harp. With all your questions. I'll try and get through as many as I can next time. Okay, until next week, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.